Basically, conservatives love the fair tax, but it's not going anywhere. There doesn't seem to be any traction. There are serious questions from independent observers about the implementation of the fair tax. So it's a time for conservatives to admit this level, crack up to the and move on to the further areas of tax reform.
Good question. Our tax code is 74,000 pages long. It's 185 times bigger than it was when the 16th Amendment was adopted. Think about what that means to us when we go to file our taxes every year, and we've got April 15th just right around the corner. We have to have tax reform in this nation. It's essential. Whether it's the fair tax, the flat tax, or the simple tax, I believe that they're all fine alternatives to the tax system that we have now. For me, I prefer the simple tax. It doesn't have the rebate that the fair tax has.
Well, I stated earlier on that I believe the fair tax does have support, so I think the question needs to be challenged. I mentioned 73 in the House, and that's 113 Congress, and that's House of Representatives Bill 25. We had 73 co-sponsors, I stated earlier, and 8 in the Senate. Only 10 for the flat tax. And here's the problem that we had, well, alternatives, say the flat tax. It doesn't tax your investment, or it taxes your expenditures, your income, but it doesn't go ahead and what it doesn't do is your investment income. So those who are well-heeled, they benefit from the flat tax. The fair tax is across the board. Ladies and gentlemen, the fair tax promotes repeal of the only one for the 16th Amendment. How many here want the 16th Amendment to stand? Raise your hand. That shuts the door on whether or not the fair tax is dead. In the House of Representatives, we have that movement, ladies and gentlemen. And I will tell you that all the income, payroll, self-employment taxes, capital gains, gifts, taxes are eliminated. That's $431 billion by 90%, $388 billion. Ladies and gentlemen, the fair tax is fair. Any tax is better than what we have right now. But anyone who tells you that they're going to move aside from the 16th Amendment is not going to represent you in Congress and get rid of the IRS and bring it down. We're looking at another capitulation before we get to the office. Congressman Rosinski will advocate the repeal of the 16th Amendment. And right now, until something comes along better, the fair tax is the one to push.
The first and foremost thing we have to do is eliminate the IRS. That is the most important aspect of it. It projects itself in our lives and our liberty, and I think everybody in here has faced that, and you've seen what's happened over the past several years. There's challenges with each one. The flat tax is the simplest to move over to. Just go to a 10% across the board flat tax, but the argument becomes, do we have certain deductions still? Can we deduct charitable contributions? Or what about your mortgage interest payments? Can we still deduct those? That argument's going to be there. The biggest problem with the flat tax is it still leaves in place the 16th Amendment, and it taxes you achieving the American dream. The fair tax is complex. It has so many moving parts, and it has a rebate that's involved with it. But the problem that we have with the fair tax is there's no transition plan. I mean, as a small business owner, I can't do a major changeover in my business without some type of plan for transitioning. Now, I've met with the authors, the idea makers of the simple tax, and it's a brilliant idea. It simply transitions us immediately to a flat tax, repeals the 16th Amendment, goes to a national sales tax, and if the 16th Amendment is not ratified, the repeal isn't ratified, then we fall back to a flat tax.
Well, let me ask you this. Everybody who's a conservative in here, raise your hand. That's what I thought. So let's go ahead and do the poll right now. How many of y'all believe that we as conservatives should abandon the fair tax? Raise your hand. That's about what I thought. The fact of the matter is there are independent groups and there are independent groups. And I've learned this over a decade in public service. A lot of independent groups are funded by one organization or another that has a vested interest in the outcome of the study. And the fact of the matter is, the studies that were quoted by Professor Swint, the folks that were funding it had a vested interest in maintaining the status quo. The fair tax is the best possible alternative in the long run. In the short run, we've got to do other things until we can repeal the 16th Amendment. That's absolutely true. But we need to get in there and start to come up with a tax system that instead of deterring economic growth, galvanizes and increases economic growth. The first thing we need to do is start dropping the tax rates down, in particular dealing with the corporate tax rate. We literally have trillions of dollars sitting offshore right now because the corporations are not prepared to bring it back to the United States at our present very high tax rate. You want an incentive plan in which we don't have to borrow money? Bring that money back underneath a restructured corporate tax plan. In addition to that, we need to bring everyone's tax rates down in order to spur growth. Then we need to start looking at the flat tax, and then finally, and someone did mention it, and I do agree with them, we don't go to the fair tax until we repeal the constitutional limit dealing with the IRS. But those are steps that need to be taken, and we need to start taking them now because the status quo is unacceptable.
I endorse my fellow representative people's comments about the flat tax and the fair tax and this tax and that tax. The problem we have, as I said before, is that our government has gone insane and they do not want to change the tax code. The reason is they like to control the public. I'm a big believer in liberty, and I'm a big believer in this flag and what it represents. The key is to reduce taxes and increase our GDP. If we do not increase our GDP, we are in such serious trouble. What I almost finished the last time that fits in right with this conversation is that if we eliminate the corporate taxes completely, federal corporate taxes completely, trillions of dollars of foreign corporations' money will come here with the corporations. So why do you care? Very simply, they won't be taxed on their profits, which means they have to invest that money. If foreign corporations come here, they will build factories and new facilities providing an enormous increase in domestic employment. And I foresee that if we do eliminate federal corporate taxes, ladies and gentlemen, we will have more jobs than people to fill them. Incomes will go up, and the chronic unemployment problem we have will go away completely. On NBC News the other night, it said that Brian Williams said that only 1 in 9 American workers who are unemployed will ever get a full-time job again.
Thank you.
That's a disgrace.
President Reagan, if he were here this evening, would say in answer to that question, the same answer that as a Reagan conservative I give. Not only no, but heck no. We should never, ever, ever give up on what is right, and we try to do what is right for America. Now, we all know that the IRS is bad. It is bad evil. And we also know that the most powerful force in the universe is the force of the status quo. It is difficult to move a seemingly immovable object. It is difficult to get rid of the income tax. It is difficult to get rid of withholding. But if we simply lie down and say, oh, the opponents of the fair tax have beat us down and it's no longer viable, then they win. I refuse to let the liberals win. I refuse to let the status quo win. We must continue, as we did back in the 1990s, to continue to press forward from the grassroots on up. It's not going to come from the top down. It comes from we, the people, to keep the pressure on Washington, to keep the pressure on the bureaucrats, and we will get there.
Now we'll have 2 more questions from Twitter.
This question is for Tricia Pridemore, and she drew the lucky number because this is arguably the most important question that any of you will have to answer tonight. This is from @Scott23, which is Representative Scott Turner. Warm Coke or cold Pepsi? Or what 3 things would you cut to move toward a balanced budget? I'm more interested in your answer to the first question though.
I'm going to answer both. Warm Coke, 7 days a week, 365 days a year.
Support the domestic company, Coca-Cola.
I would start by looking at 3 federal agencies. I would look at the EPA, the Department of Energy, and the Department of Education. I would also look at the 22 labor programs through the United States Department of Labor that make up a section of workforce development spending in our country. As our state's former executive director of the Governor's Office of Workforce Development, I have seen it. I have lived it. I have cut government waste, and it can be done.
The next question is for Allan Levene. It is from R.O. Harvey 1, which is Rosie Harvey, as many of the Republican. What are your thoughts on congressional term limits? Will you have a self-imposed term limit?
I'll answer the second part of the question first. That is 8 years. I commit that I will only, if I'm elected, I'll only serve in the House of Representatives for 8 years. And also, because I'm 64, you know that that's the truth, because I'll be in my mid-70s. And if you get older, you kind of know that eventually there is an end game. So I'm determined, because I'm a naturalized, very proud naturalized American citizen who loves this flag, that I want to fix this country, and I will, in 8 years, and that's it. Second part of the question, or the first part of the question, is now term limits. I'm a big supporter of term limits, but I'm going to be the heretic in this instance. Because of the complexity to try to get a term limits amendment passed, which has been promulgated for decades, I doubt that this will be anything more than hyperbole. So I have a practical solution, and the practical solution will serve in place of the term limits amendment. And it's really simple. If you're in the House of Representatives and you've been there for 8 years, 4 terms, or in the Senate 2 terms, or 12 years, and you run again, you lose your pension. It's really simple. Washington is driven by money. Our elected congressmen and women, all they're interested in is money. Once you're on this side of the microphone, you get to understand what's going on, really understand what's going on in Washington, and the money, which is the basis of all decisions. So if you eliminate their pensions, you will get them to quit. And that would be a self-imposed term limits amendment. Thank you.
So, and for this question, we will start with Mr. Barr and work our way to Ms. Pridemore. By all accounts, we're in the midst of a constitutional crisis. The reason we're in the midst of a constitutional crisis is we have an imperial president who shows no regard for the boundaries and the separation of powers. As an individual member of Congress, what would you do to serve as a check against the uncontrolled power being exercised by President Obama?
Well, as the House of Representatives member who first called for the impeachment of President Clinton, I have a little familiarity with how to stop a president run amok. There are in fact several specific steps that as a member of the House of Representatives you can take. First of all, the president cannot spend one dime for the running of the White House or anybody working there or any of the commissions without having funds appropriated by law from the Congress of the United States. That starts in the House. And when a president signs an executive order that goes beyond his authority, which we have seen this president do time and time again, it is time for the House of Representatives to attach a rider to the White House Appropriations Bill denying any money can be spent for that particular order. They can do the same thing for any particular action by any department of the government or any agency or individual in the government. That will do one of two things. It will either force the president to sign it because he needs that spending bill, or it forces him to do what we did with President Clinton. It forces them to come to the table and talk about these issues on our terms. We have that power in the House. We need to define the rules of the playing field and actually hold this president accountable and stop him through the power of the purse strings.
The key problem we have with President Obama is that he is expanding executive power. And the real problem is that the next president will inherit that same level of executive power, and that president will start to get involved in mission creep based on what the House of Representatives and the Senate let him or her do. You have to form a caucus. A caucus is a group of representatives who are kind of middle of the road, both on the Democratic side and on the Republican side, and you have to work as a bloc to stop certain bills from passing. If you can stop financial bills from passing, it will help check the ability of the White House and the President to run the country by executive fiat. So, and that needs a cleaning of the House. We have to help the current members of Congress to retire. So we need new blood in Congress, and we need to turn over, as the founding fathers said, the members of Congress, they do what they need to do and then they leave. At the moment, they do what they want to do and they stay, and it's all wrong. Thank you.
Well, first off, a couple things I think I've already started to do in order to pull back on the imperial presidency. One is to start to pull back on Obamacare. See my good friend Scott Turner over here. He and I co-sponsored a bill this year called HB 707. What it simply does is it takes on Obamacare. It says the state of Georgia will not be a participant in this economic train wreck. We got that passed, so we sent a message to Washington to take back our country and to start pulling back on President Obama's overreach. The second thing we did this year in the Georgia House and the Georgia Senate is that we passed that constitutional convention that I called for, that will call for a balanced budget. The best way to start to curtail someone from overreach is to start to limit how much they can spend. Right now, the federal government has a blank check. We need to put an end to that. The third thing we need to do, and as a congressman, when I first get elected, I'm going to insist upon, is to make sure that, provided that we have still a majority in the United States House, that no bill goes to the floor of the House without a majority of the Republican caucus supporting it. That way we can start to curtail the over excessive actions that we've seen taking place even when we have a Republican Congress. The fourth thing that we need to be doing is making sure that in addition to keeping a Republican in this seat, which is going to be easy, we need to make sure that we take the United States Senate. Now, my friend over here mentioned his work in the 1990s, and he's absolutely right. However, we had a majority of the U.S. Senate as well. Those are the four things that we need to be working on immediately. Thank you all very much.
About 3 weeks ago, I got a call from the New York Times, and the reporter said, we want to fly down, if you're having an event, we want to come and visit one of your events. We hear you got a lot of momentum in your campaign, and you've been endorsed by most of the conservative groups throughout the United States. And we want to come down and visit you while you're having an event. And the whole thing that you want to interview us about was this very subject matter here about the imperial presidency. And after I sat down and did the interview, I found out just the other day that the RNC actually read that article and said, this is the talking points that we're going to send out through all Republican candidates. And that originated right here. Look, there's three things that have to happen. One, we created this storm. Congress created a perfect storm because you can't control the other branches if you don't even have a budget. For years, we didn't even have a budget. We were giving a blank check to the president. We must have a budget, and we must have the courage to stand up and exert the constitutional authority of the legislative branch. And third, we have to have leadership that has the courage to stand up against the President of the United States when he violates his constitutional authority, and not give him a blank check and just allow him to borrow money without any control. As we just recently did, we expanded the debt ceiling without any control. We have to have courageous and strong leadership, even in our own party, who will stand up and who will exercise the constitutional authority of Congress.
Whether it accentuates the issue, we have a leadership problem, ladies and gentlemen. We have a leadership problem. Congress has the ability to overturn executive orders. Article 2, Section 3 of the Constitution requires the President to, quote, take care of the laws and faithfully execute them. We have a leadership problem. If Congress had 2/3 override executive orders, they're costing us a great deal of money. Whether it's our energy that you pay at the gas pump on 7-year moratorium off the East Coast or on home oil, or whether it is your taxes to not get through a fair tax or an equitable tax. Ladies and gentlemen, it is the will of this Congress. It is a failed Congress, it is a failed leadership, and it is full of career-minded individuals. When you have someone who says that Obamacare and supports it on the Affordable Care Act, 57 years in the Congress and says, to control the people, Mr. Dingell, it's time to go home. Ladies and gentlemen, we have the will. Do not be fooled. What we need is leadership and confidence. And we can take this back, and we can turn back the imperial presidency.
Thank you.
There are three things that I can do, and one that you can especially help me with. First and foremost, we have to have a balanced budget in this nation. We cannot go on continuing to spend over $17 trillion in the future, borrowing money that we simply may never be able to afford to repay. The second of which is we need to use the power of the House committee structure to call in the department heads and call in those agency executives, those bureaucrats, and make them answer for the policies and procedures that they're passing off as laws. Laws are made by the legislative branch, they're enacted by the executive branch, and we need to stand firm on that. And the third thing is something you can especially help me with. There are 6, and some say 8, very competitive seats in the United States Senate this year. I say that for the final 2 years of President Barack Obama's final term, we need to make sure that Republicans hold not only the House with conservatives, but also the United States Senate as well.
And now we have the final 2 Twitter questions.
This is for Representative Lindsey from @SarahNBeck. How do you feel about foreign aid, and what are your recommendations for reform?
First off, I kind of like Barry's question. Can I trade right now? But seriously, anytime that we sort of look to foreign aid, we need to be looking at it from the prism of what is in the best interest of the American people. We need to recognize that we live in a dangerous world, and some foreign aid is going to be necessary, particularly to strong allies like Israel. Israel is surrounded by enemies. Israel is standing up and doing a lot of our dirty work in the Middle East, and we need to stand with Israel and countries like that who are firm allies of ours, and make sure that they have the resources that they need to stand up to folks that want to, quite frankly, kill us. So we need to understand that. The second thing, however, toward down the road, is that we have to understand, getting back to balancing the budget, is that we need to be making sure that there are no sacred cows. Foreign aid, just like every other aspect of the U.S. government spending, has to be looked at and scrutinized closely, and if necessary, cut in certain areas so that we can bring back a balanced budget and revitalize our own economy. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is for Bob Barr from @W Solomon. What is the most important thing you believe Congress can do to stimulate the economy and create jobs?
On the global level, strategically, we need to get the heck out of the way. We need to reduce the regulatory burdens, reduce the tax burdens, get the federal budget balanced so that we create certainty instead of the uncertainty that is holding back our economy right now. We also need to do everything we can to ensure energy dependency, which we are moving toward as a result of the tremendous technology we've seen in the last few years with regard to shale oil exploration. Specifically, though, as a member of Congress, there are legislative proposals that we need to champion and make sure we get through, such as the Rand Paul bill in the Senate with its counterpart in the House, the REINS Act, R-E-I-N-S, which will force an administration to come to the Congress and get approval for any regulatory burden that exceeds a certain amount. $100 million probably ought to be lower, but I'll take that over what we now have. So the Congress, once again, forces an administration to come to the Congress, the House of the people, and make sure that those regulatory burdens and those tax burdens do not continue to mount and hold down our economy.
Okay, for this next question, we're starting with Mr. Loudermilk and moving to his right. And then we'll come back and look at the last 2 candidates. And it's about immigration. Immigration policy is controversial for Republicans in 2014. Some Republicans have advocated comprehensive immigration reform, advocating a pathway to citizenship. Recognizing the importance of the Latino vote in Georgia and nationally in the future, What's your position on this controversial area?
Well, it's interesting, and that comes up a lot throughout the campaign, and it always amazes me as a legislator serving 9 years in the State House and State Senate. We always want to create new laws, but we're not even enforcing the ones we have on the books. And the first thing we need to do is secure our border. It's a national security issue. It truly is dangerous. I spent 6 days on the border back in 2006 with a Border Patrol agent. When we were looking at doing immigration reform here in Georgia, we decided, a group of us legislators, 3 of us went down and we spent a week on the border. And we saw how dangerous it was. I've also been down to South Georgia and visited with the farmers and seen the challenges that they face with the guest visa or the work visa program. So we need to secure the border. We need to fix the legal immigration system. It now takes between 10 and 15 years and $12,000 to $15,000 for someone to legally immigrate into the United States. And that needs to be reformed and fixed. And we need to have a usable work visa program that not only will allow people to come in and work, because quite frankly, we've created an environment in our society where we pay people more to sit at home and not work than actually go out and work. So it leaves a lot of our employers with a situation where they have to bring in immigrant employees. And so it needs to work, not only to allow them to come in, but be able to track them and know when it's time for them to leave and that they're taken back to the border to go home.
I appreciate the question, and I appreciate folks that have gone to the border. I too have gone to the border. The difference is I came back from the border and co-sponsored HB 87, which was one of the toughest anti-illegal immigration bills in the country that Georgia passed in 2011. And I was part of the House leadership, and I was a co-sponsor of that bill to get that through. Bottom line, number one, secure the border. No nation can long survive without a secure border. Number two, no amnesty. It's contrary to the rule of law. It's unfair to those folks that are waiting patiently in line to come here legally. And number three, it won't work. The last time we tried it was in 1986, when we only had 3 million people here illegally. Now we have over 11. That's the official number. It should be higher. Number three thing that we need to do is break the issue down. There's a difference between a comprehensive bill and a grab bag bill. A grab bag bill is where you take different issues and you throw it into one bag and hope you can get it passed. Immigration is, in fact, a series of smaller issues that need to be looked at separately. We need to be taking a look at who's here legally, who overstayed their visa, who wants to come here that has skills that will benefit the United States, who can come here and work in particular industries where we have shortages. The bottom line is, underneath any proposed immigration bill, we ought to have one simple rule. What is in the best interest of the American people?
I used to live in California. 51% of the California population is Latino. It's a Democratic state. If the Republican Party does not embrace the immigrants and the Latin vote, then we can start losing elections. It will be a disaster. We must embrace our Latin American citizens. When I lived in San Diego, I was in the insurance business, and one of my clients was a Border Patrol agent, and he took me out in his cruiser. We went up in the hill at midnight on the border of Tijuana, and he gave me these night vision binoculars. He said, "Look at that ridge line." And I looked, and it looked like a Korean War movie. You could see hundreds of people coming across the ridge from Mexico. These were economic migrants. Most of them are hard workers, and they came here to make money to send back to wherever they came from, Mexico or Central America. Australia has the same problem. They have boat migrants from Indonesia. Saudi Arabia has the same problems. They built a wall with Yemen, and they're still coming across from Yemen into Saudi Arabia. Spain has the same problem. They're coming across the Mediterranean into Spain. These people are economic migrants. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to tell you the truth, which is we would never stop people coming here from overseas and working illegally, because these are economic migrants. If we actually controlled our borders, which we don't, we wouldn't see all the drugs we get coming over the border. A massive increase in the volume of drugs. All we're doing is pushing out the migrants into the desert. They will come over here, and we need to embrace and figure out a good solution. And I think we can do this. Thank you.
There are two myths lurking in that question. One is that Hispanics in this country will necessarily vote for Democrats simply because Democrats believe in amnesty and a path to citizenship. The other myth is that Hispanics will not vote for Republicans if we say we believe in the rule of law, and that means protecting our border and fighting illegal immigration. The vast majority of Hispanics in this country believe in the rule of law just as we in this room do. And they want to make sure that the opportunities available to them are the opportunities that aren't taken away by illegal aliens coming into this country. Very simply, one of the things we need to do is simply enforce the laws that are on the books and demand that this administration, which has ordered United States attorneys and immigration officials not to enforce the laws of this land, not to take into custody, and not to deport those who are arrested in this country and who are here unlawfully. We need to do that, and we, the people, need to insist on it and do what Neil Warren, for example, is doing here in Cobb County, and that is making sure that those who are in this country unlawfully and violate the law are detained and deported.
I don't believe that Hispanics necessarily would not vote Republican. They believe in the rule of law. They believe in following laws. I'm very honored to have friends that have led a Hispanic outreach coalition for our campaign. I know Lissandro's here someplace. I can't see him at the moment, but there he is. Hey, guys. And they help us really bring Hispanics into the fold of our campaigns. We can talk about these issues in a really free and open and positive dialogue. For starters, we have to secure our borders. It's fundamental. We've got to secure not only our southern border, but also our northern border and our ports. At the end of the day, amnesty is not the answer. Visa reform really and truly is. We are the only Western civilization that gives visas. 83% of them are awarded simply for family reunification, while 17% are only rewarded for work visas. We have a visa challenge in our country, and I think that that's the kind of work that I want to do as your member of Congress. Roll up my sleeves and solve these problems, but do it in a positive and uplifting way. I think that Hispanics are right at home in the Republican Party.
Well, I think Chris Barr took us down this road with a tweeter, and I think I set the stage for the answers. Secure the border, complete the double-layer fence, no amnesty, end the idea of the anchor baby, and the chain migration. Those that are here, anchor babies are U.S. citizens. And once we get to Congress and we do a fundamental law change, then we will have those who are here to be certified that they're in the process, they're in America, and they become part of the system. Look, all Americans favor immigration. What we have is that each other, we're being presented with something that can be easily fixed. I presented to you an idea of 1917 selective service. Bring them out of the shadows. If they're here, it's a pathway to citizenship. And if you have a home, someone's providing for you, you're providing for yourself, why not make them part of the system? But if you're not part of the system, you can be here to do crime, then you go home. This is how we need to do it by leadership, not by sound bites. We need to take the laws we got and articulate those laws. And that's what you expect of your congressman. And I will tell you that Congressman Rosinski will deliver on immigration reform. We will fix this problem.